Hey guys, it's Dr. Justin Marcagiani here. Really excited to connect with you all today. Today we're going to be doing a quick chat on hormones. I'm going to dive into a couple of clinical pearls that I see in my practice that have work with hundreds of female patients and male patients that have a major effect on modulating and supporting hormonal balance. These are like my top 5 hormonal balancing strategies. We're going to dive in. Before we do, put your comments down below. Let me know what's worked with y'all for helping to support your hormones in the past. Let me know strategies, supplements, diet, etc. All those are very important. Really curious to know. And give me a thumbs up. Really appreciate the thumbs up too. So one of the first things in regards to hormones that's very important, okay, this may be common sense, but I try to give a lot of knowledge guided by experience, is building blocks, nutritional building blocks for your hormones are very important. So healthy cholesterol from animal products, very essential. Fat-soluble vitamins, A, D, E, and K, very important. Lots of good protein, very important. We have kind of steroid-based hormones that are going to be more cholesterol-based, and we have peptide-based hormones that'll be also protein-based. So a lot of these protein, fat-soluble vitamins, and cholesterol, especially healthy animal cholesterol, very helpful for hormonal building blocks, very important. So if you have a vegan vegetarian diet or it's very nutritionally poor or a lot of processed food, that may set you up with a deficit out of the gates for just hormonal issues. So really important, make sure the food is nutritionally dense, anti-inflammatory, and low in toxins. That's vital. Now, if you're having a lot of good nutrition in there, well, the next thing is we have to make sure we're able to digest it and to break it down. So if we have a lot of chronic acid reflux or poor digestion or constipation or bloating, where we're not quite breaking down our food and our nutritional building blocks right, well, that could tell us that we may have hormonal issues because we're not breaking that down. Therefore, those nutrients can't get into our body, get in our bloodstream, and be taken throughout the body to be used as building blocks. So if we have a bottleneck in the nutritional side, that could be a big factor. 3, of course, is going to be just stress. The more stressed we are, whether it's emotional, right? That's a big one. Chemical stress can be big too. If we're eating foods that are like inflammatory or we're just nutritionally deficient and we have a lot of emotional stress, well, now what tends to happen is our hormones kind of go on 2 sides, right? We have an anabolic side, which is like growth hormone, testosterone, estrogen, progesterone. They kind of help deal with growing and they help deal, they're anabolic. And then we have anti-inflammatory hormones, which would be cortisol, right? They're catabolic, cortisol. I always put progesterone in that category because progesterone can be used to make more cortisol. So we have our anti-inflammatory and then our anabolic, and some are they kind of cross over. Insulin's more anabolic, growth hormone's anabolic, testosterone's anabolic, right? But the more inflamed we get, we could have high amounts of testosterone because of PCOS, right? Because of inflammation. So some of these hormones, they kind of interact and cross over. So with men, for instance, the more inflamed men get and the more stress they get, that can actually cause an upregulation of aromatase and could increase their estrogen. So see how these things kind of cross-react. So your hormones are going to be either pro-building or anti-inflammatory, trying to reduce stress. And so if we're chronically in stressed out state, cortisol is going to rip up your protein, kind of decrease your muscle mass. As a woman, you'll see your progesterone levels start to drop, and that will start putting you into an estrogen dominant state. Because if we normally are 20, 25 times more estrogen than progesterone, here's progesterone up here, and that ratio starts to drop. Even if you still have more progesterone than estrogen, that ratio is going to throw you off, and that can create breast tenderness and cramping and mood issues, excessive bleeding / hemorrhagia, infertility, a lot of mood issues, back pain, cramping, fluid retention. All those are possible situations. And then, of course, xenoestrogens from the environment, foreign estrogens. They can come from plastic components, right? They can come from pesticides or herbicides or rodenticides, come from mold toxins, come from heavy metals. They're going to disrupt our hormones. And again, the easiest thing is eat organic, avoid plastics, and avoid a lot of the chemicals in the water, because a lot of times you can get pesticide runoff or hormone runoff in the water. So clean water, clean food, and then make sure it's organic and make sure we're avoiding the plastics as well. That's a big, big thing. Plastics are probably okay if they're in a refrigerator or it's kind of cold environment, right? But ideally, if you're heating stuff up or it's going to get exposed to light, you want some kind of a Pyrex or a glass container is much better, okay? Really important. And then I would say last but not least would be just making sure our detoxification pathways are running well. So if we have good hormonal balance but we can't detoxify it, then a lot of times we can reabsorb it. So if we don't have good sulfur, good glutathione precursors, good B vitamins, and good methylation, N-acetylation, and glucuronidation, we may have a hard time eliminating. Hence, we're reabsorbing a lot of our hormones. So being able to break down your proteins, break down your amino acids and your B vitamins is going to help with your body's ability to eliminate a lot of these toxins. So blood sugar is really big, digestion is really big. We talked about kind of stress is really big. We talked about the toxicity is really big, and then also xenoestrogens really big. Those are kind of the big five across the board. So I hope you enjoyed today's video, today's content. You can try to apply at least one of these things. If you're struggling with hormonal issues and you want to dive in deeper, feel free to click down below. You can schedule the consult with myself. Really excited to work with you and help with y'all. And we'll actually open this up to a live Q&A here for y'all too. Let me see what I got here for you guys in store. All right. So out of the gates, a couple questions already came in. Dr. J, not sure if it's on topic, but I wanted to say that I too have a hairline tooth crack, and your video was recently very helpful. I'm using a lot of fat-soluble vitamins, and it's feeling 20% better. Yeah, as long as you start to know if there's an infection in the nerve root, you'll start noticing sensation to hot and cold, and that starts to get worse and intensify over time. If the nerve is not affected yet, you can use, like I mentioned, the vitamin K2, the fat-soluble vitamins, some of the oil pulling, and maybe some essential oils to kind of clean that area out. I would recommend doing a lot of hydrogen peroxide, 3% in your mouth, to kind of keep your mouth a little bit more sterile, just so no bacteria comes into play. I had to get a root canal because that infection got in there, and once it's in that tooth, it's such an isolated area, it's hard to get stuff in there to knock it out, and the root got infected. Now, the difference with my root canal is, and I'll have the doctor on that did my root canal, is we used a special laser after the root was removed. And the laser is powerful enough to get into the microtubules where a lot of the bacteria and crud can hide. So the problem with root canals is you close up that root and there's a lot of bacteria and junk still in there. And with these newer technology, you can at least clean out that root a lot better. So when you seal it up, there's less chance of bacteria and crud staying in there. So that's really important if you're going to do a root, because you really got two options at that point. You got a root canal or you got an extraction. An extraction is about 4 times the cost, and it's still very traumatic to your body. Now, that may be an option for you, but I always look at it as if your health's reasonable, try to do a root canal that involves a sterilization process using a laser. There's another technique called the gentle wave technique, which uses like a fluid kind of thing to do the same kind of thing. Again, only 40% of the population can do it, because if there's a hole in the side of the tooth, it could burst the tooth open a little bit more. But that's a good kind of first step, is find someone that does it with a laser. And I'll have my doctor on very soon, and we'll talk about what we did for me. I'm in menopause. I have under chin hair. Is there a way to get rid of it? So, I mean, you can take a look at your hormones and see where you're at. Anytime women start to develop excessive hair on their jawline or anywhere else, we always want to look at their androgens. So make sure androgens are good. The biggest way androgens go up in women is too much carbohydrate, too much insulin. So make sure your carbs are good. Make sure you're not getting excessive hormones from your food. And then we can always take a look at your detoxification pathways. Make sure there's enough nutrients to run those pathways, sulfur, glutathione, B vitamins to help those pathways run. Outside of that, make sure just simple things like water and insulin, dysglycemia, and good food, good paleo template is at least lined up. Emotional stress is a challenging one, even with adaptogen. Started a different job and working with people who perpetuate the stress cycle. A challenge to get to homeostasis is one I've noticed. Yeah, I mean, with emotional stress, I mean, it depends what you're dealing with, right? Always develop boundaries. If some of those boundaries don't work because your work doesn't have good boundaries, you got to just do your best to create them as much as you can within that cycle, within the confines of whatever that corporate cycle is, what your options are. And again, with your family, I mean, the easiest thing with family stress, I have 2 young boys, 1 and 3, is just having routines, right? The more you have a routine, the more you can go back into familiarity. You have good schedules. Kids eat at this time. They eat these foods. We do this after dinner. Our bedtime routine's this. So the more you can create routines, it allows you to kind of turn the brain off a little bit, because you're not like, well, what am I going to do tonight, right? You kind of just get into that routine, and that helps a lot. So good routines, and a lot of times when there's stress, usually there's not a good routine. Try to get the routine dialed in. That helps a lot. 40 male, a seriously short fuse, sometimes can't stand to have anything go wrong. Diet style then, low carb paleo, anything to do to help with his adrenals. I mean, it just depends. Like, if the things that are setting him off, are they perpetual things, like it's the same thing all the time, or just random different things? I mean, anytime that's the case, make sure hormones are good, blood sugar is good, nutrition is good, and then you can always look at neurotransmitters, right? Serotonin, dopamine. And then you can always look at techniques like EMDR or NLP or EFT to kind of decrease that stress response. So whatever those things are, it's not hitting him as hard. And again, if it's a pattern, it's easier. Okay, good. Not to mention the pandemic just dragging on and adding more difficult. Yeah, I totally get it. Yep, I get it. I mean, for me, I'm in a bubble, right? I try to not have any of those things affect me at all. I still go out to eat and have my routine and do all those things as well. Yeah, I mean, Thanksgiving Day plans. I have some family coming over, which is great. So we just got a heirloom organic pasture-fed turkey today. We'll be doing some kind of a stuffing that will be celery and carrot based, which will be really good, kind of a paleo based. We'll have nice, good mashed potatoes, really good with some butter, some cranberry sauce, some green beans, some squash, and then I'm getting a squash pie from True Food Kitchen, which is really good. They have an awesome squash pie, which is totally like pretty much paleo approved, and that'll be pretty much it. Maybe I'll do a apple pie too with a like almond flour crust. Great question. Thanks for that. Appreciate it. So yeah, I went through the entire root canal. Yeah, I mean, I did the root canal because for me it made the most sense. It was a root canal or an extraction, and I felt more comfortable with it because of the laser. The laser, right, technique after, to kind of clean things out and to prevent any additional bacteria from hiding in those microtubules. I felt like my biggest concern was bacteria hiding in there. If I could decrease the bacteria, I felt like that would be a good option. And worst case, I can always come back later to have that tooth yanked out if I need. And again, it was a compromise too, because it was cracked from 20 years ago when my diet wasn't as great. And so it was a little bit weaker. And because of that, you know, typically once you have a crown, at some point you're just a little bit more compromised to have a root canal down the road. All it takes is one little crack, some bacteria from your mouth gets in there, creates an infection, and then it's really hard to get at it. Hey, Dawn, hope you're doing well. I've been suffering H. pylori several months ago. Suggestion to add Manuka honey to my ginger tea, and it really helped. Awesome. Very good. Take 1/3 spoon in the morning, night spoon of ginger tea, and 1/3 at night. Is this too much? What dose would you suggest? Yeah, I would say up to a teaspoon is probably fine. I don't think Manuka is too sweet. I haven't had it in a bit. It's not too sweet. I'll usually do that, or I'll do royal jelly. It was really good. But for you, the Manuka is wonderful. They use it in hospitals on burn patients. So it's really good when you have raw kind of gastritis or raw mucosa. It really can be very soothing. So I'm glad you're doing good with that, Dawn. I would say up to a teaspoon is totally fine. And just kind of listen to your body on it. I think that's good. As long as you're not getting excessive bloaty or gassy from the sugar in the honey, I think the medicinal effects of it is worth it. So keep going with it. Awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Dawn. I heard a chiropractor say that some people are naturally immune to the norovirus, not a, yep, got it. What's that? A norovirus is another kind of virus that's out there, right? You have norovirus, you have adenovirus, you have rhinovirus, you have a Norwalk virus. I think maybe the Norwalk and Noro are the same. I'm not sure. I know Norwalk virus came from Norwalk, Connecticut, I'm pretty sure. So they named the virus after where it emanates from a lot of times. So Norwalk was a big one. Yeah, so a lot of times in regards to viral issues, your T cells, your Th1 immune system can develop immunity to it. It gets really good at recognizing what the infection is and can mobilize either natural killer cells or helper cells or even antibodies really fast. So the healthier you are and the more responsive your Th1 immune system is, the faster you can mobilize a defense team to go in there and attack it. That's probably what it is. trying to stay away from high FODMAP foods and nightshades, but would it be okay to try ashwagandha? Yeah, I mean, the amount of ashwagandha you need to have a medicinal effect is only 1 or 2 grams. So the amount of food you'd have to eat to be sensitive to it will be like less than a bite of food, right? So if you're really, really sensitive, it may be a problem with nightshades. If you're not, then you're probably okay because the amount is so small. What's your thought on myself, whom AIP low FODMAP is now able to handle sprouted organic oats that are cooked really well? It seems to be able to digest it very well without too much gas. I mean, my general recommendation is to stay away from grains. I mean, grains are the seeds of grass. I just seen too many patients that don't do well with grains. If you want to put it in the rotation here or there, because you like it, that's fine. But in general, for me, I wouldn't recommend it as a staple at all. For me, like where grains come in, it's like white rice when I do sushi. That's it. So just try to get healthier where you can maybe add it in every now and then. I just wouldn't make it a staple though. But that's really good to know. All right, y'all, you guys have an awesome rest of your week. Thanksgiving's coming up, so I'll try to do another video or so next week or two before we kick it off for the holiday season. So you guys, if I don't check in with y'all, have a phenomenal Thanksgiving. Put your comments down below and look forward to connecting with y'all very soon. You guys